One of the most useful formulas for quadratic equations is vertex form, and if you remember from earlier in this chapter, a vertex is the turning point of the parabola. It's always in the exact middle of the curve, and it always represents the highest or lowest point on the curve. The official formula for vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. But before we explain what all these letters mean, let's first do a little notice and wonder with several graphs. Pause the video and think about what you notice about each of these graphs compared to their equation. If you notice, the coordinates of the vertex can be found inside each of these equations. However, the only weird part is the number inside the parentheses with the x in each equation. For example, in the first equation, the vertex is 2, 3, but the equation says minus 2 instead of plus 2. Similarly, the second equation's vertex is negative 1, negative 2, but the equation says plus 1 instead of minus 1. We'll explain that a bit more in a moment, but for now, let's go back to the formula. As we just saw, the h and k in the formula represent the coordinates of the vertex. The h represents the x-coordinate, and the k represents the y-coordinate. This is really helpful when we eventually graph these equations because we can see the vertex in the formula without having to do any calculations. Now, a little more about the weird part where the number inside the parentheses is kind of opposite of what the actual vertex x-coordinate is. To explain, here are two examples of plugging the vertex coordinates into the formula. We have two graphs, and their vertexes are 3, 4, and negative 2, 5. Starting on the left, we can plug in 3 for h and 4 for k. Then, on the right, we can plug in negative 2 for h and 5 for k. This is where we need to change something. Notice how the formula on the right now says y equals x minus negative 2 squared plus 5. As we've seen many times in this course, whenever we have a minus symbol followed by a negative symbol, this changes to a plus sign. And boom, that's why we always see a plus inside the parentheses even though the vertex x-coordinate is negative. The minus-negative combination always changes to a plus. And on the other hand, in the equation on the left, we just have a normal minus symbol with no negative symbol next to it, so we can leave the minus symbol as is. Therefore, anytime we're plugging in a positive number for h, nothing changes and it always stays as a minus. Finally, there is one more letter we need to discuss in the formula, the letter A. But before we do, let's notice and wonder about 4 more graphs. Pause the video again and think about what you notice about each of these graphs compared to their equation. This time, all the vertexes are the same, and the only difference in the equations is the number in front of the parentheses. You may have noticed the difference between the graphs is how wide they are, and some open upward in the positive direction, and some open downward in the negative direction. This is exactly what the a value does in the formula. Positive a values cause the parabola to open upward, and negative a values cause them to open downward. In addition, larger numbers create steeper curves because the rate of change is increasing faster. Therefore, the larger numbers create a more narrow, steeper-looking curve. And the opposite is true of smaller numbers. The closer to 0 a number is, the slower the rate of change is, and the graph gets flatter and wider because of the slow rate. Okay, I want to sneak in one last thing, and I promise I'll be quick. Vertex form is similar to point-slope form from linear equations earlier in the course. In fact, if we add y1 to both sides of the point-slope equation, the two formulas are almost exactly the same. The only difference is the exponent of 2 in vertex form, which makes sense because quadratic equations typically have an exponent of 2 in them. Both these formulas have similar tendencies. The number next to the x shifts the line or parabola left or right, and the number at the end shifts the line or parabola up and down.